There's several ways to show depth in a painting. You can use scale, like things in the background are smaller and things in the foreground are larger. You can use perspective, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective. You can use atmospheric perspective. Things in the background tend to be lighter. And we're going to use a little bit of that, but the main thing that I want to talk about is I want to try to keep it simple and just talk about overlap. If you have something that's in front of something else, you're immediately going to have depth in your painting. And that's the gist of it. Like, you can't have depth in your painting without having objects. So when you're making these objects, it's important to think about what's in front of it and what's behind it. So as you can see here, we started off with the sky, and now I just drew in a quick little rock formation, and with the lasso tool, and then using Control-Shift-I, that inverts the selection. And then I just take a soft brush and paint some white behind that mountain. And here I go again with it. We paint a basic shape, Control-Shift-I, and then kind of splatter in some paint. And look at that. Already we have two large mountains there. And it's the weird thing, like, you can just keep going, and you can just keep pushing this technique more and more, and each time you think that you can't push it anymore, you can. Like, you just keep drawing mountains. Now, it's going to probably eventually get a little chaotic, so you want to kind of control that, but very simple technique, overlap. And that's what I'm doing here. And I guess technically maybe it's atmospheric perspective too, because I am making objects in the background lighter. But yeah, this is how I get my mountains in. I start with their shapes, and then I just start stacking mountains on top of mountains. And you can do this the opposite way too. Like here, I'm going to draw the outside of the map. Instead of inverting, I went ahead and selected that area that I was going to fill with the white, and then I used that time I used the gradient tool as opposed to the brush. I kind of go back between those two. Sometimes the gradient brush with a radial on it is can be a little bit more effective than just a soft brush. So when you're watching the time lapse of this painting, remember this technique, because I'm doing this a lot in this painting. And photo bashing can help with coming up with ideas, but so can this technique. I started creating a lot of the mountains by just using this simple technique. So once you get some mountains in, you start thinking about your foreground. And then it's funny because this is the foreground now, but it eventually becomes the midground later. And that's the trick. That's the play there. I'm just having fun with it. Because like I said, you can just keep stacking. And like, I'm not thinking too much about perspective here. I'm just stacking. And that simple technique alone, without any like real perspective in there, you can get depth. Perspective being that 1 point, 3 point, 2 point perspective, the thing that we all love to do and think about when we paint. But yeah, you don't have to do that with this technique. Now, in combination of that technique and this will really sell it, because if you have things receding into the background with vanishing points and everything, you're gonna get a lot more depth. So So you're at the point where you have the overlap technique down. Now what do you do? Well, that's to add some details. So right here, I am thinking about, okay, at this point, maybe you'll see some trees on this little piece here that's not quite as far back as some of the other mountains. So I'm going to add a little bit of trees there. And then further on in this, you'll see that in the foreground, I put grass. You can see individual grass blades. So things in the distance going to be a lot more blocky, and things in the foreground, it's going to be more detailed. So you want to think about those kind of things. If I wanted to take this further, I'd really would flesh out that barn, have it, maybe it's a very rustic kind of barn where there's all these little details in the wood, and but when you get all the way to the background with the mountains, you can't see the trees anymore. You can't see any of that. It's just a basic block. And that's that's another technique that just helps with communicating depth. That falls right in line with scale contrast. You have a giant tree in the foreground, and then you see how small those trees are by the time they get to the background. That's immediately going to have a good read of the distance in between those trees. But don't get too carried away. Just focus on overlap for now. So I encourage you to apply yourself with this. Do a little sketch, kind of like what I'm doing here. Just start with a dark mint tone, add a sky, and then start doing this little overlap technique where you're adding in a bunch of different layers of land masses, and see what you can come up with. Grab some reference photos. Learn from them. See how you can apply this technique by studying some of the reference photos. And create something awesome. Alright guys, I hope that helps you guys out with some of this stuff. The art journey and learning can be challenging. I mean, there's a lot to learn, but if you take them in little pieces like this, maybe it's not so daunting. And so hopefully that helps somebody, and I hope you guys enjoy the time lapse, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
I'm on my own, broken and alone. I feel the rain crashing down all around this empty town. I'm searching for the lost and found, but you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare. Don't stare, cause the flames will burn us. I thought you were the one for me, that's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me. I used to kiss your head when you cried for me, hold your hand while the pain was over, keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me. No point in blaming you, you did not know. Oh. I thought you were the one for me, that's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas, oh you meant the world to me. Oh, you meant the world to me.